Alright, real quick, don't skip this. If this video disappears later, just know I tried to warn you. There's a place in the Appalachian Mountains where people don't just get lost, they get wiped. No search results, no evidence, like they were never there to begin with. I didn't believe any of that either, until I found something my dad hid for years. A map. My mom's map. She wasn't missing. She was tracking something. Something living under those mountains. Something that moves in total darkness and doesn't need eyes to hunt. We went down there to prove it wasn't real. Worst mistake of my life. Because the moment we turned off the lights, it started talking. And it wasn't guessing. It knew exactly where we were standing.
When I was 14, my mother vanished. My father, a controlling man who couldn't regulate his own rage, told the town she'd walked out on us. I grew up believing I was abandoned, which pushed me toward a reckless crowd just to get a reaction from a father who barely looked at me. The cycle only broke after my father passed away recently. While clearing off his house, I found a narrow slit hidden behind a drywall panel. Tucked inside was a heavy iron key and a hand-drawn map he had failed to destroy. That map shattered a 20-year-old deception. It proved my mother didn't run away to start a new life. She had spent her final months secretly investigating a location off the grid, right up until the day she was taken. The coordinates led me into an isolated section of the Appalachian woods. These ridges are massive and deceptive. In this terrain, the line between being on the trail and being lost forever is thin enough to vanish in the morning fog. I found the cabin reclaimed by the forest, with thick vines choking the porch and boards rotting over the windows. Once inside, I realized this wasn't a home. My mother had converted the space into a secret biological field office. Her journals contained detailed anatomical sketches. She drew pale, eyeless humanoids that navigate the deep caves using vibrations. Her notes described a sophisticated form of echolocation, allowing them to track movement in environments where light never reaches. The documentation proved my mother's sanity. She had identified an intelligent apex predator living directly beneath the human population, and she was documenting their behavior with clinical precision. I recruited Caleb, a childhood friend with a reputation for taking dares, to help me verify the coordinates. We geared up with high-end lighting and rope systems, determined to see if the markers on my mother's map led to anything physical. We bypassed the known entrances and pushed into a cavern system that felt like a second mountain range hidden below the first. The limestone ceiling stretched out over a labyrinth of tunnels that have been dissolving for hundreds of millions of years. Further in, the atmosphere turned heavy. The absolute blackness down there feels like it has mass. It doesn't just surround you, it presses against you. Our flashlight beams seemed to terminate a few feet in front of us, swallowed by stone. This environment renders modern survival gear irrelevant.
Without a horizon line or reliable light, your senses begin to reinterpret reality, leaving you vulnerable to anything native to the dark. A scraping sound echoed off the quad walls to our right. Instinctively, we both killed our flashlights at the exact same time. We stood in the void, trying not to breathe. Then, a voice emerged from the blackness. It was rough and strained, like a throat being forced to mimic sounds it wasn't built for. It said, "Turning off the flashlight won't help. I see you better in the dark." Caleb screamed as something slammed into his leg, dragging him toward a narrow passage. In the strobe of my light, I saw the pressure marks. It wasn't a bite. He was being held by a massive pale hand that applied enough force to break skin through his heavy pants. We fought back with pure adrenaline, hauling Caleb up and sprinting toward the rope markers.
We abandoned our gear and didn't stop running until we saw moonlight at the sinkhole entrance. The creatures from my mother's sketches are real. They possess terrifying physical strength, and they have learned to use psychological manipulation to hunt. Doctors at the hospital confirmed that Caleb's leg injuries were inconsistent with the teeth or claws of any local wildlife. The wounds were the result of extreme, human-like crushing pressure, a grip strength that shouldn't be biologically possible. Within 48 hours of our hospital visit, federal agents arrived. They seized the medical records, confiscated my mother's journals, and cleared every scrap of evidence from the cabin. Crews moved into the forest immediately. They wrapped the cabin in yellow tape and permanently sealed the sinkhole entrance with thousands of pounds of poured concrete. The speed and scale of this operation point to a well-oiled, active cover-up. This wasn't a standard investigation. It was a containment strategy. Agents threatened me with federal charges if I ever spoke to the press. They made it clear that my mother's story was to remain buried, and any further exploration of those coordinates would result in permanent detention. I realized then that they never sent in extermination teams. They didn't clear the nests or flood the tunnels. By walling off the entrances and burying the research, they have ensured these predators have a protected, hidden habitat where the steady stream of local disappearances never has to be explained. Stay out of the Appalachian woods. Sleep with the lights on. If you hear a familiar voice calling your name from the shadows of a cave, keep running. The true horror of Appalachia is the systemic human complicity that ensures these predators remain undisturbed in the deep dark.